All right, well, it's the top of the hour. We'll still have some people filtering in, and that'll be just fine. They can come on in as they can. Excited to be with everybody today. The last day of the DataMark Orbit conference here. I hope it's been a good experience for everyone. We're going to follow up that keynote about innovation in public safety with a discussion about technology differentiation and innovation to accelerate public safety GIS. I'm Jeff Ledbetter, public safety GIS expert here with the DataMark team. And I'm joined by Leanne Magoski, who is the 911 director at Monterey County, California. Thanks for joining us, Leanne.
Thank you.
It's worth noting that Leanne is a candidate for NENA's second vice president. So we want to give her an opportunity to pitch her platform to us here today. But I've already voted for her, so I can't go do it again. But definitely recommend Leanne for that position to anybody who's listening. So Leanne, you want to take a minute here and kind of introduce yourself and why you're running for second VP at NENA?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining all 56 people on the call as Jeff goes to hide his picture because of his bandwidth issues. No pressure on me. I'm Leanne Magoski, as he mentioned, and I have been in this career for about 26 years. I've been in the seat of a dispatcher all the way up now through to a director. And I am passionate about 911. I'm passionate about technology, but I'm passionate to make sure that the technology works for those dispatchers to be able to do the best job that they can for the citizens, the field units, and for themselves. So I have been a Cal NENA board member for the last 6 years. I'm on the state 911 advisory board. And I decided to run for national office, which is definitely not something for the faint of heart, to try to advocate for everybody out there. And I was honored that DataMark wanted me today to talk about technology differentiation and innovation as I've seen it through my career and how public safety GIS will benefit from that. Jeff?
Yeah, great. So as Leanne mentioned, I've been having some bandwidth issues, so I'm going to turn my camera off and only pump out my screen and my voice. Yeah, and we really appreciate Leanne joining the presentation today too. She's gonna offer some color commentary about how her experience with technology differentiation and innovation has really accelerated all the technology in a PSAP, and she's got great experience in that, as she said, and appreciate you joining us.
And
so,
sorry, Jeff.
Yeah.
Before Jeff gets started, I wish I could see everybody's faces. But this is the new Zoom reality. I don't know how many of you like Brene Brown, but one of those things about leadership and whatnot is I've really identified with a lot of things that Brene Brown said. And I just started looking at her new book, The Atlas of the Heart. And if you take a close look at the cover on that book, in the beginning of it, it says, "We are the map makers and the travelers." And she uses that metaphor to explain emotions, but we as in 911 public safety use that metaphor quite literally to save lives. Yeah. And that's what this DataMark presentation is about.
Well, we were both at NENA Goes to Washington last week, and I was part of a panel where we were talking about innovation in public safety, kind of a very similar topic. And one of my co-panelists was from T-Mobile talking about his location-based routing. And he put a couple of really cool maps up there, and he said, "Who likes maps?" Right? And I kind of sheepishly raised my hand like, "Hey, I'm way into maps here." So anytime I get that connection to maps and data, I love it. So that's a great quote. Thanks for sharing that. So it actually fits in really well here with what we're doing. So I wanted, before we get into how DataMark deploys this method of technology differentiation and innovation to accelerate public safety GIS, I want to just define what we're talking about. First is differentiation, right? Which feels kind of like an elemental definition here in this first bullet point, but it's from other offerings. so often the solution marketplace is full of many variations on the same thing. And so we want to ensure that the things that we offer are different. They're better, they take a different approach, they use different technologies, but they accelerate our reaching the destination instead of just sort of add more noise to the background. Differentiation also requires responsive shifts to stakeholder needs. You can look at 911 in general, and the technology of 911 is a great example where the lack of differentiation causes frustration. Public expectation about sending text messages to 911, or the 911 dispatcher knowing exactly where they're at when they call automatically, is a good example of where the public gets frustrated because they call and making assumptions that the technology that they have in their hand, in their smartphones, is able to be used. You know, the data and information is able to be used by the dispatcher right away, but it's not, and so it causes frustration. I'm sure you've experienced that, Leanne, firsthand.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things is that we get so many public expectations. And again, as Jeff mentioned, with 911 Goes to Washington last week, advocating with 13 different lawmakers, really explaining to them that the ability of our PSAPs in nationwide don't have the public expectation, and we need help to be able to get there.
Yeah, and so I think that's a good example of differentiation. Next generation 911 at its core is about differentiating itself from the old technology that 911 was built on in 1968. Instead of accepting more sort of kludges and backdoor changes and sort of like patchwork, it's a complete redesign of the technology and implementation. And I think that's a good example of differentiation. In terms of innovation, it's all about big ideas to solve problems. I like this little Venn diagram over here that I completely ripped off from somebody on the internet, but really demonstrates that innovation is at the intersection of possible, usable, and valuable. It brings significant improvement and has constant movement toward the goal. Innovation can be sort of summed up in the word agile, right? It moves quickly and it changes often. It requires focus and flexibility. The focus is in on what is the problem and how are we solving it, or really what is the problem, and the flexibility is on how are we solving it. We tried this, we failed, right? Effective failure is built into the idea of innovation. We tried this and it failed, so we're going to adjust our approach and do this. Well, we failed better this time, so we're going to try something even different from that. And eventually the failures get less and less, and the success begins to emerge as reaching that destination.
And you know, Jeff, something to think about as this idea of innovation in a technology space really commingles with a 911 center. Us 911 dispatchers are like, failure is not an object. You know, we think of failure as I failed to put that traffic stop in, I failed to create officer safety. And I think it's really important for us to have that mindset and understand that technology and innovation, it's not gonna be perfect. We have to go with the flow and make things work, which we all know, as any good dispatcher does, we do make things work every time. But in the big picture, sometimes we're like, well, that doesn't do this, that, or that in a technology thing. And we have to be willing to know that we want to grow with innovation and see it get better by giving good feedback and trying it.
Yeah, absolutely. The dispatcher brain is the most innovative piece of work in a dispatch center, right? And the ability to kind of assess, adapt, and overcome any failures in technology can only be done by that human brain. That's a good point. Well, and that actually goes into, we'll talk about having a culture of innovation, a culture of differentiation in a minute. But I think that example really is a good exemplification of that idea of building a culture of innovation, is one that fails, but isn't afraid to fail, but fails less and less until you reach the point where you're on the track, right? So let's use DataMark as an example. And I got to say, I'm one of the original data markers here. We'll talk about our history in just a second, but this is a source of great pride for me because I feel like DataMark has been an innovative organization. There's certainly been one where we have failed forward again and again and again, but we've been able to sort of take that focus and flexibility and make our failures less and less and our successes more and more. And I just want to kind of highlight how that works. You know, it started out that we wanted to be different from the start, and we always defined ourselves as an entity in a company that wants to first educate, then advocate for our clients' needs, and innovate products that solve the problems. Educate, advocate, we used to say problem solve, but now we say educate, advocate, and innovate really are kind of our core values. And it starts with our 360-degree client experience, our user experience, which is not just about the product. It's not just about making sure that contracts go easily on business administration, but it's about working with our partners and our project management team, all moving into that client success space. We that's why we started out with our approach of educating, advocating, and innovating, is that we want our clients to be successful. And when we focus on client success, we find that we're a success. And so we built this portfolio of products and services to that end, right? That bring client success and will make us successful as a company as well. That is built around the core of DataMark VEP. And if you're familiar with DataMark VEP, it's all about validate, edit, and provision towards quality assurance and quality control in your GIS data for not just next generation 911, but also to support other public safety systems like CAD. And to that, we've added on, and I'll talk about the history of these things, and that'll demonstrate the sort of innovation. But we've added on to it a number of offerings on the outside ring there. Cloud Assign, which extends VEP into a pure address play and really takes the addressing tools that we built in VEP and extends them to really meet the needs of the addressing authority. Indoor mapping is something we're super excited about as we innovate in that space with our partners over at CRG. Data hosting, again, was born out of a need identified by clients that they didn't quite have the ability to host data, but they wanted to be able to see their data in other public safety applications, such as PSAP mapping and analytics applications. IMSAC Generator and VEP Verify, which is our mobile application for VEP, are good examples of that as well. So let me take you through a little bit of the history of how we got there, and really talk about, and I hope this demonstrates sort of that agile fail forward approach that we've taken, and you can see how we got there.
Hey, Jeff, can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah,
for all the people on here? Because, you know, I want to really take a moment for us to all remember 2015, you know, or I'm going to even go back a little bit farther, 10 years ago, when we were all going to, hey, you have to transition out of your flat file CAD, and you have to go to a map-based CAD, because this is for next generation 911. And, you know, all of us, our PSAPs were really left with, how do we work with all of this map stuff, a map? And then at the time, remember, if everybody on the call can remember, sometimes we were just faking it on the map, right? Just drawing a piece rather than doing the GIS. So, I mean, it's amazing to figure out how far we've come. And I know later I'm going to talk about that geovanting story, but I just want to tie in to really take a moment to figure out how far we have come in this time period.
Yeah, and I think you point back to 2010. That was 11 years ago. The amount of innovation and technology change that's come to the PSAP in the last 11 years, to my mind, definitely leaps the 20 years before that, right? Because 20 years before that, you were thinking about E911, and which was kind of, like I said, a kludge and a side add-on to kind of bring in more location information for cellular calls to 911. But it wasn't perfect. It kind of worked kind of in a weird way. And like you could get some location information, but you still had to rely on the caller really to give you the location. And it really represents kind of current state today, and why the idea for next generation 911 came up was we really need to sort of chuck this set of kludges and patchwork and completely redesign and re-innovate how the technology works to meet that differentiator need of the frustration of the public.
Right.
So Michael Baker International, who owns DataMark. DataMark is the public safety GIS team of Michael Baker International, which is a multidisciplinary engineering consulting firm. It has a long history of geospatial and addressing projects. In fact, we were one of the first to develop and deliver GPS broadband geospatial technologies in the United States. We've been around for 80 years, which obviously there wasn't GIS technology 80 years ago, but the company's been around delivering solutions for 80 years. And so it was very natural fit back in the early 2000s to really grab onto some of these geospatial technologies and begin delivering them. We're really proud of where we've come and more proud to share how we've leveraged technology, differentiation, and innovation to better serve our customers. In 2015, we began offering an on-premise solution to meet addressing and geospatial needs. We developed and delivered DME, which was the DataMark. I'm making a mistake here trying to say what DME was. I forgot the name of it. We actually installed it and sold it to our clients in San Jose as their master address portal, and DMX, which is our data quality piece as well. So they were two products that would later come to be in VEP. Our customers use this solution to perform address management and best practice validations. Like many solutions in 2015, we were on an on-premise solution, required quite a bit of work to keep the solution updated and to meet the market demand. It wasn't perfect, but it was a good place to start. In 2016, we accelerated our indoor mapping solutions to serve the private sector with evolving needs. Indoor mapping grew in market segments such as transportation, aviation, and hazard mitigation. While indoor mapping is the new buzz for 911, our teams have been performing indoor mapping long before public safety was able to consume the data. Some of our notable projects include DFW and ATL Atlanta airports. They're using those indoor maps for things like wayfinding and internal routing. In 2017, we recognized that public safety addressing in GIS had new needs as NG911 began to accelerate. Really, the point of this 2015-2016 timeframe was that we were doing a lot of things as a multidisciplinary engineering consulting firm, where we added a public safety perspective to it in 2017 to coalesce the technology that we had created and begin to innovate it for 911 and public safety needs.
You know, Jeff,
Yep.
you mentioned San Jose, and I don't always tell everybody, but a lot of people know I spent 11 years in San Jose and got my start in promoting through the city of San Jose, working for the fire department.
Yeah.
And in 2005, we cut over from that COBOL CAD to our first map-based CAD system. And we bought commercial map data because we didn't know any better. And on the go live date, 70% of our calls verified. The other 30% didn't.
Wow.
It was a very, very rough day. So
Yeah.
while I didn't work for San Jose in 2015, I had moved on to manage another center. This is the commitment and the hard lessons that we learn as PSAPs, that we need to partner for technology and differentiation and innovation to make sure that we're staying on the front end of public safety GIS.
Yeah, I think that actually kudos to the city of San Jose, because I think what you just described in 2011, 2010 was definitely part of the impetus for what brought about this master address project in San Jose. The city auditor actually did an audit and found that they had 9 different address databases across the entire enterprise. Public safety was one of them. And they also found that they all had different data in them and that they were being managed by different people with different skills, and they wanted to create a master address database, and that's what brought about the DME implementation there. So that's cool that we have that sort of like far-flung connection from way back that comes together in 2015 and moves forward from there. In 2017, we began our digital transformation, the idea of leveraging technology differentiation and innovation. We needed to meet our customers where they were, not box them into a solution. And I'm excited to talk about how we stepped into that world in 2018 when we launched DataMark VEP. This is really the evolution of those DME and DMX solutions that we had in 2015. A cloud-native DataMark VEP, a cloud-native solution that leverages the power, resiliency, security, and reliability of cloud computing, coupled with true integration on the Esri platform. Our goal was to create an intuitive solution so that anyone could use it. Within months of our deployment, our customers told us they loved the user experience and began saying, well, if it only did this, then I could do that. We heard them and took an agile approach. And a few short months later, we released multi-jurisdictional collaboration and observer roles. Multi-jurisdictional collaboration allows our customers to share data with their neighbors and collaborate of borders and resolve gaps, overlaps, and create snap-to points so that their data always meets in the same place. No more sending your data to someone else and having them run a QC report, then sending it back to you. Observer roles put VEP in daily users of VEP like fire inspectors, dispatchers, and land development so that they can report data errors but not jeopardize data governance. In 2020, we released Aggregator after we had heard our customers say they need to collect, validate, and aggregate data to support county, regional, or statewide needs when they want and need to. No more sending your data through a portal and waiting for the data to be merged. Get your data within minutes or hours, minutes to hours, when you want it, when you need it. We never told our customers that they can only run validations monthly, quarterly, or annually, because it's not a service, it's a software. It's your data, you can run it when you need to. Fast forward to 2021. We continue to hear from customers and other users in the seat. Understanding you as an NG911 transition requires you to maintain your MSAG while supporting LVF function. We leverage technology to bring MSAG generator. You spent time, effort, and money on data cleanup. Why not use that data to inform your MSAG? Create a GIS-based MSAG. MSAG generator allows users to build those geospatial MSAG files, or create tabular change files to update your MSAG with the provider that you have. Data governance continues to be an important component of NG911 GIS and Addressing. We developed innovative solutions so that an entire county, region, or state can collaborate in one solution. Geofencing was a good example of that that emerged in 2021. It was released so that you can solve the data supply chain problem, but protect jurisdictional data and only allow it to be edited by the people who should be editing it. Through geofencing, your addressing agency and local GIS users can manage their data yet seamlessly to share results to support NG911 initiative. I'll show you an example of geofencing in the next slide. Speaking of data sharing, when we then released data hosting capabilities in 2021 as well. Now more than ever, we want to and need to share data with our neighbors and ingest data from various sources. Data hosting allow you to share your data in a secure and highly available manner with those who need it most. In 2022, we continue to bring innovative solutions to support your needs. With the release of VEP Verify, you can now put the power of VEP in the hands of those that are in the field. Available from Google Play or Apple App Store, VEP Verify places the power of VEP in the palm of your hands, in your cell phone, tablet, or other handheld device. It's your data and you should have access to it anywhere.
So Jeff, it's interesting to really talk about, these timelines. I kind of love these infographics to see where DataMark has come. And, this is a great time to talk about for the folks on the call that remember back in the day, it was if you were in charge of the location and GIS for your CAD, you had to go geovanting and you had to drive out and you had to look for that part. And then you had to write some emails, send some spreadsheets, and you transform all the way today with VEP Verify that you can literally have somebody out in the field being able to provide information and spatially see that. And then also with the observer role, you can have, everybody has that one stakeholder that loves to make changes constantly.
Yeah.
And with this product, they literally can do it within the map without sending multiple emails and screenshots, and still almost a lot of times that still created more confusion. And so it's really great to see how far that VEP has come to be able to solve those needs for public safety agencies.
Yeah, I love that you've gotten that from our education and about the product and the need. And it's exactly that. It's that fire inspector that's out there in the field anyways, or the fire captain that had a problem with routing or whatever needs to get it notified, or the dispatch supervisor. When you were a dispatch supervisor, did you ever love getting those notes on sticky notes that said this didn't route, this didn't verify?
Yeah, and then I handed it off to somebody else who went, okay, well, what does that mean? And then they have to go drive it, or they have to ask a million questions. Yeah. It's really amazing to see how far and how easy it is now.
It went to your GIS person's desk and kind of sat there on their monitor for a few weeks, maybe. At some point they would get around to it, but there was never any sort of tracking or auditability to what happened to that one fix that I need to have made. And so if it was a place that often had needs for calls to 911, it would persist despite the really urgent need to fix it. And
well, I mean, even in this day and age, unfortunately, we still have this dirty little secret of maps aren't updated all the time, because you can't be able to constantly roll things in. And there's that public expectation or the field expectation that, well, I made the update. And my understanding is with Aggregator and whatnot, that we can get to our data faster. It's not a quarterly or every 6 month kind of thing. We can actually do this whenever we please to be able to update. So it's still not a perfect system, but we certainly have come a long way.
Yeah, from a data perspective, that's exactly what we're trying to meet the problem with the solution that makes the data available on a nightly basis if you want it, right? And then at that point, it's really up to how does your CAD system ingest and use this data? Is it feasible to do it weekly, monthly? Is it better quarterly? But yeah, that's been a constant problem in every public safety environment that I've been a part of, as well as getting those map updates out there either on an urgent basis or on a regular basis, but getting them done. It's been part of a data problem and part a CAD software problem to figure out. And what we're doing is trying to innovate so that the data problem goes away, and then it's an issue of making your CAD software do what it needs to do.
And yeah, I just really want to hit that home to all of the listeners that aggregator, you literally can, if you wanted to do, if your person wanted to do a map roll every day into your CAD. And I know there's some people like, I don't want to do a map roll every day, but you can. And that is an amazing change to our ability since I've been on a map-based CAD now for 16 years. I mean, this just was not possible back in 2005.
Yep, that's a really excellent point. So this is a picture of VEP. It's an interface that actually what just occurred to me as I clicked to this next slide. What I should have done was shown you the first interface and shown you how the idea of differentiating and innovating the technology moves to this interface. Maybe for the next time I get to do this presentation, I'll do that. But the fact is that we have a dashboard that gives you a quick look at all of your data quality points of interest. You've got an upload interface where you can put data in, you can map schemas and things like that. Validator does the validate function, does the QA/QC checks. Map is where the edits take place and where the observations take place. Downloads is where we can automate that and make that data available on whatever basis you want it. You can schedule all these things. And then the reporting function and administrator functions can't be overlooked either. The reporting about your data and about who is editing your data, it becomes really useful when you need that sort of audit trail that we talked about. And then actually one of the things that I view as one of the most innovative things that our map interface does is the fishbones down here in this inset. We GIS nerds everywhere have known that fishbone is a great way to analyze the relationship between address points and road center lines. But the creation of and the automation of the creation of fishbones and the analysis of fishbones, looking for intersections and other things like that, has really been innovative. There's not a lot of products out there that create that. There are scripts and things like that, but you have to be a real GIS expert to create those successfully and to do them again and again. But VEP makes that available to both GIS experts and non-GIS experts. So that's really a point of innovation, a good example of the innovation that's contained within VEP. We talked about earlier Verify, VEP Verify here. That's our mobile app. You see, it actually is the exact same experience that VEP gives you on a desktop in a mobile app. I got to tell you, when I downloaded this first, we released it back in January. I downloaded it to learn how to demo it. And I was really blown away by the fact that our product team actually replicated the user experience from our web browser-based VEP onto something as small as a phone in a very one-to-one fashion. So I'm super impressed by our products team capability there. And that's because they heard the customer base say that they want a mobile experience, but they don't want to have to kind of relearn a workflow just because it's mobile. And then a couple of quotes highlight some of our other additional innovation that we've brought along the way in the last 5 years. This quote from Jean Barrera talks not only about the software really, but it's our cross-disciplinary expertise. That in and of itself, I feel like is innovative, because there's not a whole lot of offerings out there where we combine the space of GIS nerds like myself with public safety experts like Bob Murphy or Sandy Dyer, and a couple of others that are on our team. Mark Whitby's another good example. And we're leveraging the experience in those two deep disciplines to create great experience in the intersection of the two. And then this quote from Manatee County, who's been one of our longest customers out there, clients out there, really talks about kind of the surprise benefits as COVID pandemic struck of VEP being a SaaS-based solution, right? All of a sudden they were needing to work from home, but they didn't have to VPN to do it in VEP because they could just come to a web browser to do it. So all that's fine and dandy, right? Differentiation and innovation of a product, but it's not good if it doesn't produce fruits for us, right? Which is the acceleration. Acceleration and this idea of having an agile approach brings constant improvement. And we want to talk about a culture of innovation, talk about having ideas, figuring out how to implement those ideas, and collaborating between us as a software provider, as a SaaS provider, and you as client or an industry, collaborate to make it even better and then scale our success. So we go from having lots of agencies across the country, and we're going to talk about in a second, the different types of people trying to develop GIS, local GIS data for NG 911, from urban to kind of mid-sized to very rural, being able to really get on the GIS bandwagon able to before, because that was something that was expensive and maybe out of reach for a lot of agencies, something that was outside of their expertise. And I think, Lynn, your 911 center in Monterey is a good example where you pull in GIS experts because it's not in your area of expertise. But a lot of folks in that position, were kind of like heads down answering 911 calls and managing the wires and cabinets technology that enables that. So much so that they couldn't even sort of bring their head up, take a breath of fresh air to say, oh, wait, I think I need to bring a GIS expert for this. So we've been able to create a product that serves the need of both GIS experts and non-GIS experts to scale the success and the development of local GIS data, not just for Next-Gen 911, but for use in all the public safety systems in any center.
Sure. I mean, I think that this is the one of the reasons we came to DataMark was because we're at this great collision, I think, in time. We have people that are trained, but they rotate through, and it takes quite a long time to become GIS proficient. Our county in Monterey, shout out to them, is very interested in doing more GIS, but they don't always have the bandwidth to be able to take on something as heavy as next generation 911. And so there are many options out there, but what we liked was this VEP product because it allows us to control our day-to-day, but then it also is, like I call it, the phone a friend, that we have the DataMark experts right there available to us to be able to help us when the project gets a little bit too large. And then also that ability for them to come in as the true subject matter experts of GIS and be able to look at our data to make sure that we're staying on track. So I really feel like it's that ability to truly collaborate. And in that, it's very innovative. And that's what we appreciated about this product.
Great. Let me show another example of acceleration. Our clients in the state of Alabama had a need to aggregate their GIS data for next generation 911 uses. They had an EZNet with core services. They also had a lot of counties out there in the very rural areas of their state that really, frankly, didn't know how to spell GIS. They didn't really understand the technology or how to get the data that they needed, but yet they need local and authoritative data. So they brought on our aggregator solution back in 2020, and they really accelerated, as you can see in the progress of this latest dashboard they released. They've brought on all, I believe it's 83, if I do the math there right, and again, math is not my strong suit, but I believe it's 83 ECDs, maybe it's 85, I can't remember, but they've brought them on. And they've got 57 into a place where they're in the midst of and about to be finished with their local GIS data development in the space of a year. So across a couple of years, they're going to be able to meet the GIS data need where, back in 2018, 2019, they had a lot of holes in their availability, quilt, patchwork, right? Where GIS data just didn't exist, or it was in such poor quality condition that it wasn't going to be sufficient for NG 911. So kudos to the state of Alabama for setting up the infrastructure, right, in a federated way so that they can empower the local GIS data provider to do the things they needed to do to bring the level of accuracy and completeness of their data up so that it can meet the statewide need. So that's a good example of what Aggregator does and the innovation that they took. But we think about the idea of local GIS data development. I kind of laid this out for a NHTSA, a National Highway Transportation Safety. I messed up their acronym too. Anyway, NHTSA houses the National 911 Office, right? in the Federal Department of Transportation. And they reached out for input on GIS, the state of GIS data preparation for NG 901. And we envisioned this sort of Cartesian plane because we're just that kind of nerd. I'm that kind of nerd that thinks about the progress of this local GIS data development across the Cartesian plane. And we labeled this axis about resources, right? From the spectrum of have-nots to the spectrum of haves. When I'm talking about resources, I mean GIS experts, tools and solutions, the data to start with, and we'll actually talk about that with the next axis, but also the funding to make it move from point A to the destination of ready to go with Next-Gen 911. If we look at this other axis as the availability of data to start with, all the way from no data to lots of good data, there's work to be done even in that case. We kind of scatter graph the progress, and this is in general, right? There's no specific data points here, but we saw three kind of clusters of typical challenges and needs emerge. The first cluster down here, where they start with not enough resources and not enough data. This is what I labeled the where do I start crowd, right? I'm so busy answering 911 calls. I'm so busy handling all this discussion about where my call handling solution technology is changing, and I'm having to switch out software for that. I'm so busy thinking about the network that's serving me. How long do I keep a camera trunk around? All those sort of what I can refer to as wires and cabinets things that they can't even think. They don't even have the bandwidth to think about where do I start with GIS. And so they have their own sort of set of challenges as it relates to this journey of development of local authoritative GIS data. They need tools, they need solutions, they need funding, they need some expertise that they don't have now. The second cluster was right here in what I labeled the development group, where they've got some resources and they've got some data to start with, and they've begun their journey, but it's going to be a little while. But we're accelerating the journey here, right? Ultimate goal and destination is this group up here that has all or almost all of the data and has plenty of resources to make sure that they can maintain what they've built. The acceleration starts lower left here and moves to the upper right. There's still some outliers, right? There's some good examples out there of where they may not have all the resources they need, but they have good data to start from. They don't have a big gap to fill from here to here, but they don't have the resources to fill it. That's another set of challenges. But the innovation and differentiation of not only VEP, but our other services to help them can create the acceleration that's needed. Ultimately, we wind up reaching our destination, right? Remember back in the day when you had to have a separate piece of hardware to get GPS directions? And it was lots of clever commercials about turn left now, and people turn right into the storefront. You have reached your destination at some point because of the acceleration that you receive. And whether it's through the acceleration of DataMark VEP as a product, or it's through the acceleration of any application of the idea of differentiation and innovation and technology, you'll eventually get to your destination. You'll fail forward enough that you get there, and you get there successfully, and that's the goal. So that's what we have for our discussion today. We've left ourselves some time for questions or comments that anybody had. I don't see any in the Q&A. Looks like there was a little bit of chat going on, which is always awesome, but I don't see any questions there. Does anybody have any questions? If they do, just drop them in the Q&A and we can address them. While you're doing that, if there are any to be done, I want to just make sure everybody is aware that our closing ceremony today is at 1 p.m. Pacific, and we'll be handing out the prizes that we've been advertising for registration and attendance to DataMark Orbit. Among those is going to be PSAP recognition. The National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week is April 10th to the 16th, and we get to celebrate our headset heroes. We received a number of nominations. I think it was a couple dozen nominations with some compelling stories about some great actions taken on by some PSAPs that we definitely want to recognize. And so we'll be announcing 3 winners today, sponsored by our various sponsors at that closing ceremony. So if you are a part of a PSAP that was nominated, be sure to tune in there so that you can see if you get the catering or a gift basket. We have 3 different prizes. In addition to that, we're also giving away test fees and certification costs for 1 GISP and 1 ENP. And if you're not familiar with the GISP and the ENP, they are the professional certifications of the 2 disciplines, GIS professional or emergency number professional. There are qualifications that have to be met in terms of work experience, the right types of education mix to get those points. But if you qualify to take the test, this prize will cover the test fees and certification. I happen to have both of these certifications. I got my GISP before there was a test, and I'm really excited that I never had to take that test. So, so if you're a GIS professional, you can bone up on coordinate systems and all the other things that go into GIS. But I did have to take a test for the ENP, and I know, Leanne, you're an ENP. I don't know how your test experience was, but the hardest part for me was labor laws and 24/7 scheduling, which probably weren't a challenge for you because of the positions you've been in, but
no, I gotta say some of the telecom was the hardest piece for me. I just recerted for the 4th time. I recerted early because I had the points.
nice.
But I'll tell you, the first time I took that test back in 2010 was very, very difficult. But you know, you really do need to encourage study groups, get that book of knowledge and talk things out. I did a silly thing though. I did not pay attention to the points accumulation. So my first time around, before I got involved in chapter leadership, I had to take that test again. Take that test twice and you will lose your mind because you don't want to lose your ENP. So I really strongly do encourage people to take the ENP. If you need anything, you can always reach out to me and I'm glad to assist with that. And good luck to whoever wins that prize. That's great.
Yeah, so that's what we have today. Those winners will be announced as well. So I want to encourage everybody to join us at that closing ceremony to see who wins and celebrate with them. So it looks like there's no questions to ask. Leanne, sure do appreciate you joining me and giving some really great color commentary. I think your actual experience, your words of actual experience carry even more weight, and we appreciate your contribution today and being part of DataMark Orbit.
Thank you. And
to everybody who joined us as well, thanks for joining. Look forward to seeing you at 1 o'clock. And the next session, Taryn or Steph, I don't know if we have that link up, but the next session will be, I don't know what it is.
I can't help you with that.
Let me find out.
I-Access indoor mapping.
There you go. I-Access, yes, sir.
I'll send the link in the chat right now.
So this is a super interesting topic to me too. NAPSIG is the National Association for Public Safety GIS, and they have come out with this sort of best practices recommendation document about this, what they're calling the I-Axis. Yeah, fascinating presentation if you're in that space. So I recommend everybody join in there, and you can add the link at the end of this, and then of course you'll have all the other ways you found this link to find it as well. So again, thank you for your participation and attendance today, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody I'll be there at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern today at the closing.